Welcome to Story Time. When Babylon denied the afterlife and the Bible promised it. When the lamps go low, two ancient voices speak. Babylon teaches you to thicken the day you have. The Bible dares you to hope for a day beyond it. One says, build walls, carve names, and keep faith with your dead. The other says, bones rise, graves yield, and love outlives the dark. Read together, they turn fear into craft and grief into courage, limits honored, promises believed. But before we begin, let's pause while you get comfortable. Fluff your pillow, pull those blankets up tight, and settle into your favorite spot. Your eyes flicker open to darkness, just the faintest glow of dawn peeking in. This isn't just history, it's a way to live under the shadow of an ending without letting it rule you. You stand on the walls of Uruk, the sun burning copper on the bricks. They are enormous, these ramparts, broad enough for chariots, lacquered with pride, stamped with the name of your king, Gilgamesh. From up here, you can see the twin temples rising like stairways to the sky, the white spray of the Euphrates, and the city that hums like a hive. You also hear the rumors that ripple through the crowds. The king is unmatched in strength, unmatched in restlessness, and, lately, unmatched in arrogance. 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, they say. It sounds like a blessing, it feels like a problem. When a king cannot find his limits, the people suffer. The complaints carry farther than the market stalls. They ride the heat into the heavens where the gods sit in their difficult peace. The council listens. The people of Uruk need a counterweight, someone to meet the king's force with force, so that he might learn what a boundary is. The mother goddess Aruru kneads clay and hums an old song. From her palms steps a man shaped by wilderness, hair like the grasses, body like an antelope's sinew, free of city ways. He is Enkidu. He drinks with the gazelles and runs with them. He frees animals from the hunter's traps, and the hunter begins to starve. Fear drives the hunter to Uruk, to Gilgamesh, and the king smiles at the problem as one smiles at a new game. Send a woman, he says, the temple courtesan. If Enkidu learns the touch of civilization, the animals will turn away. So you follow Shamat out to the watering hole, and through days of patient presence, she schools the wild man in a different kind of knowledge: bread to eat, beer to gladden, clothing for the hips, words for the mouth. The gazelles, smelling a new scent, bound away. Enkidu feels the ache of being left behind. He learns music and laughter and the warm clatter of a human camp. With each lesson, another lesson grows. There is a city named Uruk. There is a king whose strength needs answering. Shamat leads Enkidu through the gates, and the city pours around him. Perfume, wheels, vendors yelling, drumbeats like a second heartbeat. On the night Gilgamesh approaches a new bride, as kings claim the first right, Enkidu steps into the doorway, plants his feet, and will not move. The two men collide. The doors shudder, beams groan. The earth, people swear later, tilts slightly. And then a strange thing happens. They laugh. Each has found the equal the gods intended. The city breathes again. Two heroes walk its streets where one tyrant had stalked. Yet strength needs an outlet, and when the floods recede and the air is sharp with cedar scent carried from the west, Gilgamesh fixes on a plan. Let us go to the cedar forest, he says, and cut down the trees guarded by Humbaba, the ogre appointed by Enlil. We will carve fame from trunks and bring back glory to Uruk. You watch preparations begin, axes edged bright as water, helmets fitted, offerings burned to the sun god Shamash for favor. Enkidu hesitates. He knows the forest, knows the guardian's roar, but friendship pulls harder than fear. They journey north and west for days that blur into the taste of dust. Gilgamesh dreams every night and asks Enkidu to interpret: an axe that becomes a friend, a mountain that falls, a creature that pins him, every dream a riddle that resolves into reassurance. At the forest's edge, the air changes. Even your lungs feel it, reading the old tablets, cool and resinous, a breath of shaded noon. Humbaba rushes forth with a face like storm cloud bark and teeth like split stones. The two heroes falter and then advance, and Shamash answers sacrifice with a dust devil that blinds the ogre. Humbaba pleads. He offers cedars, offers servitude, offers secrets. Enkidu, who knows the politics of gods, warns, strike before Enlil hears. They kill the guardian, a decision that will tilt the balance of their luck ever after. With axes and wedges they fell cedars gigantic enough to write their names on the sky. They lash a raft, they float the river home, they carry the severed head as proof. Humbaba's grim, quiet mouth explaining nothing. Triumph attracts eyes. From the wall of Uruk, Ishtar herself watches the king who refused to be small. She descends in jewels and heat and asks Gilgamesh to be her lover. The list of her former partners is long and the memories are short. Gilgamesh, bold in victory, catalogues the men and creatures she has broken. A shepherd turned into a wolf, a stallion driven to exhaustion, a gardener trapped in her nets. "Why should it be different with me?" he says. Rejection burns hotter than passion. Ishtar climbs the stairs to her father Anu and demands the bull of heaven. The great beast descends, the ground cracks open, hundreds fall into fissures, the city staggers. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, fighting as one, hamstring the bull and drive a sword beneath the shoulder. Triumph again, too much of it. Enkidu tears off the bull's haunch and hurls it at Ishtar's face. In the court above, the gods meet, and when they balance deeds and insolences, the scales select a payer. Enkidu shall die, they say. Illness is more terrible than monsters. Enkidu sees in a dream the gate of the underworld, watches dust become bread and darkness become clothing. He wakes and cannot shake the ache catching at his bones. 12 days he waits while his life unthreads. He curses the trapper and Shamat and then withdraws the curses, remembering the sweetness they brought. The city that cheered the two together now gathers to weep for one alone. Gilgamesh sits by the body with a grief so unkingly that even the gods shrink from it. He touches the heart to see if it still answers his palm. He covers the face. He refuses to leave. Then he rises with an understanding that cracks him. If this can happen to Enkidu, it can happen to me. There is a door beyond which no strength can push. He resolves to break it anyway. So you go with him in imagination across the land to the two mountains called Mashu, where the sun slips down and hauls itself up. Scorpion men guard the passage. Their glance kills, their courtesy saves. They recognize something vast in Gilgamesh, not God, not man, but determined, and allow him to enter the tunnel the sun uses at night. For 12 leagues he runs through solid dark, where lungs forget how to breathe. At the edge of the 13th league, a bluish seam appears. The world thins. He emerges into a garden of the gods where fruit is carnelian, and leaves are of lapis, and the paths shine with oiled light. He finds Siduri, a tavern keeper who understands the arithmetic of human happiness. "Fill your belly," she says gently. "Dance, be merry, cherish the child who holds your hand. The gods gave immortality to themselves. They gave you life for a time. But grief is louder than wisdom. Gilgamesh asks for Utnapishtim, the one man given everlasting life, and Siduri points him to Urshanabi, the ferryman who keeps the crossing to the far bank where death cannot sail. First, an accident. In his desperation, Gilgamesh smashes the stone things, mysterious, living tackle on which the crossing depends. Lacking them, Urshanabi instructs him to cut punting poles, long and many, for each cannot touch the waters of death twice. Pole by pole, they nudge the boat forward until only one remains. Gilgamesh wraps his cloak around his body like a sail and, with that last trick, reaches the other shore. There stands Utnapishtim, ordinary to see and astonishing to contemplate, a man whose hair is grey and whose days do not end. He asks why the king has come in skins and sorrow across wilderness and darkness and forbidden water. Gilgamesh answers what every mourner answers: "Because my friend died." Now the oldest story inside the old story, the flood. Utnapishtim was a citizen of Shuruppak when the gods decided to silence the uproar of humanity with water. Ea, god of wisdom, whispered through a reed screen the instructions not to a king, but to one decent man. Build a boat large as a field, seal it with bitumen, load pairs of animals, bring your family, be ready when the deluge unhooks the sky. The storm raged. The gods themselves panicked at their own work and cowered like dogs. When the waters settled and the boat grounded on a mountain, Utnapishtim released a dove, then a swallow, then a raven that did not return. He offered sacrifice, smoke wreathed the heaven, the gods gathered like flies to the sweet. Enlil arrived angrier than the flood he'd sent, but Ea scolded him. Lay the punishment on the guilty, not the whole world. You were reckless. A compromise emerged from divine embarrassment. Utnapishtim and his wife would be granted immortality, living at the edge of things as a reminder and a rebuke. Gilgamesh hears the tale and calls it hope in disguise. If a man was once made deathless, perhaps another man can do what is required. Utnapishtim sets a simple test. Do not sleep for 6 days and 7 nights. If you can resist the smallest brother of death, you may be ready to resist death itself. Weariness is a thief with soft feet. Gilgamesh sits, his eyes close, he sleeps. Utnapishtim's wife bakes a loaf for each day the hero sleeps, setting them by the head so there will be witnesses when he protests. On the 7th morning, Gilgamesh startles awake, triumphant and wrong. The loaves, some fresh, some stale, one mold-dusted, betray him. He has lost to the weakest test of all. But compassion is also a god. Before he sends the king away, Utnapishtim tells him of a plant that grows in the deep. Its prickles will cut your hands. Its gift will restore youth. You watch the king tie stones to his ankles and drop into the belly of the sea. He finds the plant, cuts it, and surfaces with a smile you have not seen since before sickness touched Enkidu. He plans to share the miracle with the elders of Uruk first, let them reclaim their quick steps and their bright eyes, and then he will taste it himself. They begin the long journey home, hearts lifted. On the way, the heat is relentless. At a spring, they stop. Gilgamesh strips and swims, leaving the plant on the bank, within nose's reach of a serpent. The snake steals what humans have hunted since the beginning, sloughing its old skin as it goes, mocking what would have been a miracle by performing a lesser one naturally. Gilgamesh climbs onto the shore and understands. He sits for a long time. Then he laughs the hollow laugh that only the experienced dead and the newly disappointed manage to share. When he returns to Uruk, he does not bring immortality. He brings perspective. The king who once measured worth by conquest measures worth by witness. Look at the walls, he tells the ferryman who has accompanied him, and he touches the baked brick with a hand that has held a friend and a plant and a spear. Read the tablet sealed in a copper box, set in a wall of lapis. Walk the ramparts, the foundation laid by the 7 sages. This is what men can do. The epic ends where you began, on the walls, with the city spread like a map of meaning. You are supposed to feel the circle close, and with it, a kind of wisdom. The gods keep immortality. Humans keep memory, craft, love, law, and songs deep enough to make a name outlast a pulse. There is an after-song sometimes added, a tablet that returns Enkidu in a dreamlike way. In it, Gilgamesh loses a drum and drumstick to the underworld and begs Enkidu to fetch them back. The rules for descending safely are strict. Do not wear clean garments, do not carry a staff, do not kiss the beloved, do not strike the unloved, do not raise the dust. Enkidu breaks the rules and is seized by the dead. With the help of the gods, he is allowed to rise briefly and describe the house beneath the earth, a place of shadows where kings sit with commoners and dust is the food. The message is plain as a sealed door. The underworld is not a realm of rewards and punishments, but a democracy of dimness, This coda does not change the main melody, it deepens it, reminding you what exactly Gilgamesh feared and why he ran so far to outrun it. So what do you carry from the ramparts at last? You carry the knowledge that mortality is the frame inside which meaning is painted, that friendship can make a tyrant into a man, that quests fail in one way and succeed in another, that a city wall can be a kind of prayer, that wisdom sometimes sounds like a tavern keeper telling you to eat your bread with joy, and that grief, when it has finished ravaging, can become the discipline of building. You carry a king who learned to be small enough to see clearly and large enough to leave something behind. You carry the oldest epic's simplest truth, the one that hums under the bricks of Uruk. You cannot keep your days from ending, but you can choose what your days are for. Babylonian views of life and death. You learn about life and death in Babylon not first from tablets, but from mornings. The city wakes early, ovens glow, boys drive goats, women sweep dust from doorways, as if order itself begins with a clean threshold. You breathe the damp air off the Euphrates, and without meaning to, you are already inside the Babylonian answer to mortality. It isn't a doctrine, it's a rhythm. The gods made a world that runs on cycles: flood and drought, planting and harvest, festival and fast, joy and lament, and you live inside those circles the way a fish lives inside water. The first lesson is simple: the circle outlasts you. You pass the city crier and turn toward the quarter where the lamentation singers gather. Their voices are low and braided, carrying a grief that sounds practiced, because it is. In Babylon, death is not a surprise to be refused. It is a neighbor whose footsteps everyone has learned to recognize. From the epic's first shiver when Enkidu slows, coughs, and sees the underworld in a fever dream, you are taught the second lesson: mortality is inevitable, even if you are a king who can lift city gates and uproot cedar trees. Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine, discovers that the last third is the part that rules the ending, and the city nods as if it already knew. At the temple, steps an Ashipu, an exorcist healer, burns cedar, and murmurs words older than the city's bricks. Someone has brought him a bowl of water, a lock of hair, a handful of dates. A child is sick. The priest does not promise to cancel death. He promises to bend misfortune if he can, to coax disease toward the door, to speak to whatever unseen thing presses down upon the household. In this, you hear a third lesson: the divine world is real, near, and unpredictable. The gods can be generous, distracted, offended, or moved to pity. In the epic, they make and unmake with unnerving ease, planting life with Ururu's hands one moment, loosing a flood the next, then regretting the ruin and arguing among themselves about how justice should have been done. You learn to sacrifice, to consult the liver, to watch the sky, not because you control the gods, but because you hope to catch their mood before it catches you. At noon, you cross the market where silver and barley both count as money, and beneath the trading you hear another understanding. Since death is certain, value lives in the things that stand after you: a wall, a sun, a name carved where rain can't reach. When Gilgamesh comes home without the plant of life, the epic doesn't mock him. It escorts him to the ramparts and says, "Look at the baked bricks set by the 7 sages, the foundation, the walls wide as chariot roads." In the Babylonian mind, legacy is the nearest thing to immortality that ordinary people can seize. You will die, but the city will not, at least not today. And if you build wisely, your work may hold back chaos for someone else's children. By late light, you arrive at a doorway where a family arranges bread and water for the dead. They speak the names of grandparents in a litany soft as bees. A small boy carries a bowl to the threshold and sets it down. Babylon believes each person has an etemu, a ghost, and that ghosts without offerings grow parched and troublesome. The worst fates, people say, are to die in the open with no burial, to leave no child to pour the water, to be forgotten. This is not metaphor. In the afterworld, as the Gilgamesh Enkidu and the Netherworld tale sketches it, dust is bread, clay is meat, and those with many sons are served by their dead, while those with none sit in a corner gnawing sorrow. It is a fourth lesson. Death is a continuation with diminished privileges, not a courtroom sorting saints from villains. The underworld has rules and gates and a queen, Ereshkigal, presiding with the Anunnaki, but its currency is memory. The living owe the dead water and name, and the dead repay them with quiet. Night finds you outside a tavern where Siduri once told a broken king what every Babylonian mother already teaches: fill your belly. Day and night be merry. Dance and be joyful. Keep clean. Cherish the child who holds your hand. Let your wife delight in your embrace. For these are the tasks of mankind. If the epic delivers a philosophy, it wears an apron and smells of bread. You do not conquer death by storming heaven. You deprive it of today by using the day. In this council, you hear the Babylonian refusal to pretend that immortality is the human project. Utnapishtim is the exception that proves the rule. Immortality exists but as a sealed gift, a divine eccentricity granted once, then placed beyond reach, behind cosmic fences. The ferryman still works the river, but the destination he serves is separation, not escape. And yet the epic does not scold the desire to live, it accompanies it. You remember how Gilgamesh hands the serpent his hope without meaning to and laughs a laugh with all the sweetness boiled off. The story lets you feel the ache, then walks you to the walls and says, build. Grief becomes craft. Fear becomes attention to the finite. A people who live with rivers that can rise and erase villages in a night learn not to wager their peace on guarantees they cannot have. They wager on habits, offerings at dawn, contracts stamped with seals, fields irrigated by law, festivals recited on cue, the Akitu resetting time so that the year begins clean even if the heart does not. At a scribe's bench, you watch a kalamu, the reed stylus, scratch wedges into fresh clay. He copies a hymn to Shamash, a legal case, and then a passage from the epic. He is not saving souls, he is saving words, and with them, order. In Babylon, writing is a hedge against forgetting, and forgetting is a cousin of death. The Nabu-blessed schools teach boys to carry forward tables, star lists, proverbs, incantations, memory infrastructures that survive the bodies that build them. Your teacher says the signs must be exact. A stroke out of place confuses reader and God alike. Even in language, the lesson repeats. Precision is mercy in a world where the ground can open. Walk along the processional way, and a Mushushu, the serpent dragon of Marduk, uncoils in glazed brick above you. You do not need to adore Marduk to understand what his image declares. Order is fragile and must be defended. The Babylonian view of death sits inside this wider anxiety. Chaos, Tiamat, is always near. The gods beat it back and nail up the sky. Kings police canals and keep thieves from the roads. Priests sing the cosmos awake again each spring. Death is part of the pressure attempting to return everything to undifferentiated sea. Life, then, is participation in the upholding, planting, building, marrying, writing, weighing, measuring, singing the names, so the dead drink and the living don't forget how to bake bread. A neighbor tells you of a dream and asks you to walk with him to the diviner who reads livers. You watch the baru, lift the slick organ, and read the notches like a map. It looks superstitious until you remember the gods are opaque and the city has invented systems to guess their weather. The epic blesses prudence, it never punishes legitimate preparation. Gilgamesh prays before the forest, sacrifices before the fight, seeks counsel after the loss. The Babylonian way is not resignation so much as adjustment, accept death's rule, then plan like a farmer who knows the flood comes and still plants. Now you stand in a courtyard where women keen around a bier. The deceased will be wrapped, perfumed, and carried to his place. There is no promise in the Babylonian imagination that the underworld will sort him into pleasure for virtue and pain for vice. That is not how this cosmos consoles. The consolation is continuity. His sons will pour water. His name will be spoken when contracts are witnessed. The harvest he taught will be repeated by hands that learned from his hands. If he was cruel, people will remember that too. The underworld makes most souls shadows, but the city above remembers with moral texture, even if the gods below do not. In that memory, a kind of justice happens. Reputations outlive pulses. Stories shepherd behavior more efficiently than threats from beyond the river. When the night is finally loud with crickets and the lamplight softens brick into velvet, you find yourself on the wall where the epic leaves you. You rehearse what the tale has made you feel, that death is certain, that immortality is rare and not a prize to be earned, that the afterlife is dim and democratic, that legacy, works, children, names, tablets, walls is the human answer, and that the gods are powerful and capricious, worthy of offerings and watchfulness, but not bound to moral calculus the way you wish they were. You do not love this last part. You would prefer a sky that pays out justice on schedule. But Babylon teaches you to double your attention to the earth when heaven feels arbitrary. Be fair in weights, ruthless against theft, generous with water at the canal gate, faithful to vows, honest in accounts. If the gods' reasons are hard to read, then let the city's law be easy to read. Somewhere out beyond the fields, a serpent slips its skin against a stone and leaves the husk as a cruel little sermon. You smile despite yourself, because the epic has already taught you what to do with that. Not envy the serpent, but enjoy your bread, keep your clothes clean, hold your child's hand, take joy in your wife, work well, sing the names of your dead, and build, always build. If you cannot stretch your days, you can thicken them. If you cannot be immortal, you can make your city feel like it is. And when at last the house grows quiet and the courtyard cools, you sense why the epic has outlived the kings it praises and scolds. It does not fix death. It teaches how to be human under its rule. It does not promise you a throne beyond the river. It hands you a trowel and says, "Here are the walls. Lay the next brick." Someone will read your name when you are dust. Biblical views of life and death. Old to you, in the quiet hours you open the first page and meet a God who speaks light out of nothing and breathes life into dust. In the biblical story, life is not an accident or a spark stolen from reluctant gods. It is a gift shaped by hands and warmed by breath. "Let us make humankind in our image," you read, and the line lands like a steadying hand on your shoulder. To be alive here is to bear likeness, to think, to create, to love, to steward, a vocation before it is a heartbeat. The garden is not a trap, it is a trust. Work comes before worry, and rest is woven into creation like a soft refrain. Evening and morning Sabbath, delight. But very early, the story changes tone. A voice suggests that God is holding something back, that life would be fuller if you reached past the boundary. You know this feeling. The bite is small, the ache is not. In Eden's echo, you learn a hard truth the Bible never hides. Death is not natural to God's design. It enters as the consequence of rupture, alienation from God, from one another, from the ground itself. Dust you are, and to dust you shall return. And yet, even as the ground is cursed, mercy threads through the sentence, clothing for shame, a guarded way, a promise that the serpent's power will not stand forever. Walk a little further and you hear how the Bible lets people tell the truth about death. The Psalms do not varnish grief, they give it words. "How long, O Lord? Tears have been my food day and night." Lament is not disbelief. It is faith refusing to be polite in the face of loss. Job sits in ashes and does not pretend. Ecclesiastes watches sunlight fall on graves and says what your bones already know. There is a time to be born and a time to die, and God has set eternity in the human heart, which is why time's brevity hurts. Scripture does not skip the ache, it sanctifies it. Then the prophets begin to push the horizon back. Isaiah speaks of a mountain where the Lord will make a feast and swallow up death forever. Ezekiel is set down in a valley of dry bones and asked if they can live. He dares to say, "You know," and watches sinew and breath return. Daniel says that many who sleep in the dust will awake, some to everlasting life. The vocabulary shifts. Sheol, the shadow world of the early pages, is no longer the final word. Hope is not a metaphor, it is a promise with names and places. Turn the page again, and you meet a man who stands beside a tomb and weeps. In Jesus, the biblical vision of life confronts death directly, not as idea, but as enemy. He calls Lazarus out and gives him back to his sisters as if returning a borrowed cloak. He tells a thief dying beside him, "Today you will be with me in paradise," and means both immediacy and intimacy. He says, "I am the resurrection and the life," and then walks into his own grave to prove it. The cross names death's sting, the empty tomb breaks it. Christian hope is not a wish for disembodied escape. It is the claim that God raised Jesus bodily and will raise those who belong to him. The letters spell this out for people like you who bury friends and wonder what to say. Death is the last enemy, Paul writes, not a friend in disguise, but it is a defeated enemy because Christ is risen. He speaks of a seed that is sown perishable and raised imperishable, the same person transformed, not erased. He urges communities to grieve, but not as those without hope. Hope, here, is not denial, it is a direction toward a future in which God's justice sorts what was never sorted, mercy mends what could not be mended, and love survives its own funeral. Along the way, Scripture teaches you how to live because of how you will die. Life is stewardship, not possession. Bodies matter, what you do with them is worship. Neighbor love is not extra credit. It is the proof that the image is still shining. Death does not suspend responsibility, it clarifies it. Teach us to number our days, the psalmist prays, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Numbering days is not morbid, it is how you decide what they are for. The Bible also insists that death is not only personal, it is structural. Powers and principalities, violence and greed, these are death at scale, and God's kingdom confronts them. That is why justice sits beside resurrection in the creed of the church. When Revelation opens its window, you see Babylon fall and a new heaven and a new earth arrive, not souls escaping earth, but God moving in, tears wiped, mourning ended, death no more because God is at home with his people. The final image is a garden become a city, a river of life running through streets where healing is ordinary and glory requires no lamps. So what, in the biblical view, is life and death? Life is received from God for God with others, and death is an intruder that will be removed. Life now is practice in love, justice, truth, and joy. Death now is an enemy we face with lament and courage, knowing it does not get the last word. The afterlife is not the point. Resurrection is the renewal of creation and the reconciliation of all things in Christ. Until then, Christians keep vigil. They bury their dead with prayers, tell the truth in their grief, break bread in remembrance, and light candles against the dark, not because candles win the night, but because they announce the dawn. If you listen closely, the Bible's music is steady. You were made on purpose. Your days are precious. Your death is real. Your hope is stronger. And when you lie down, the old metaphor returns with tenderness. Those who have died are said to sleep, not because they are forgotten, but because God keeps watch and morning is coming. Major contrasts between the two traditions. You stand between two libraries, two kinds of night. In one, clay tablets whisper of kings and floods and a city's walls gleaming under moonlight. In the other, parchment breathes of gardens, deserts, psalms, and an empty tomb at dawn. You read both by lamplight, and slowly the rooms begin to talk to each other inside you. In the first room, the Babylonian one, life feels like a concession. The gods are many and moody, their counsel crowded, their purposes mixed. People exist because someone must carry the load, irrigate the fields, keep the temples supplied, hold back the old saltwater chaos. You belong to the cycle, planting, harvest, festival, lament, and the cycle does not belong to you. Death is the rule everyone learns, the neighbor everyone knows. When Enkidu fades, you watch even a hero discover the boundary that won't move. You are taught to work well, love well, and build high, because brick and name may last longer than breath. Immortality is not promised. It happens once to a man at the world's edge, and then the door is shut. The afterworld is a dim, common house where kings and cowherds sit on the same dust. So you pour water for the dead, you keep the ledgers honest, you say the names that keep memory alive. This is wisdom here. Accept the limit, thicken the day, leave a wall behind. In the other room, the biblical one, life feels like a gift before it is a task. A single voice calls light from nothing and forms a human from dust, not as a convenience but as an image, thinking, making, tending, blessing. Death enters not as design but as rupture, the splintering of trust that runs like a crack through everything. Yet even as dust is pronounced, mercy is threaded in, coverings for shame, a promise that the serpent's rule won't stand. Here you are allowed to grieve without pretending, Job on the ash heap, psalmists unafraid to cry, how long? And you are allowed to hope without lying to yourself. Prophets push the horizon back, bones knit, graves open, death is swallowed. A man weeps at a friend's tomb, calls him out, and then walks into his own grave so that the door doesn't latch behind him. Resurrection is not metaphor for memory, it is God's answer to the crack. So you notice what shifts in you as you move between rooms. In Babylon, your best answer to death is craft and legacy. Feed the gods, tend the canals, build the walls, write your name where rain can't reach. Eat your bread, keep your clothes clean, hold your child's hand. Do today well because tomorrow belongs to no one. In the Bible, your best answer to death is trust and obedience. Number your days so that wisdom can find you. Do justice and love mercy. Bury your dead with hope because the author of life has promised a morning after this one. Do today well, not because tomorrow is empty, but because tomorrow has already been spoken for. The gods themselves feel different under your fingers. In Babylon, they are powerful and proximate, but they quarrel, regret, revise. They can flood the world in a rage and then argue over whether they overdid it. You learn to watch the sky, to read livers, to offer at the right hour, not to manipulate the heavens but to catch their mood before it catches you. In the Bible, God is not a mood to be managed. He is a person to be known, creator, judge, redeemer. He binds himself to people in covenant and keeps his word even when they do not. When you pray here, you're not guessing which God is on duty. You are returning to the one who called you by name. Even the afterlife carries a different weight. In Babylon, you expect the house of dust, hushed and level, where the best you can do is keep the living faithful to the offering so the dead do not thirst. In the Bible, you learn to speak of sleep as a kindness, not denial, but a posture of waiting because waking is real. The future is not escape from bodies but the healing of them, not exile from earth but the mending of it. A garden becomes a city with a river through its streets and God moves in. And because the endings diverge, so do the ethics. If death is absolute, you make meaning by what you raise, walls, children, songs, laws, tablets that outlast you. If death is defeated, you make meaning by whom you resemble, the God whose image you bear, the Christ whose life you rehearse, truth-telling, neighbor love, table-sharing, enemy, mercy. In Babylon, justice is prudence under fragile order. In Scripture, justice is God's own character pressed into human time. Both ask you to live attentively. One asks you to surrender with courage, the other to resist with hope. Stand again in the doorway between the rooms. You can love the Babylonian room for its honesty. It wastes no breath pretending you will not die. It teaches you to build, to remember, to keep faith with your dead and your city. You can love the biblical room for its defiance. It refuses to let death be the last word, teaches you to lament without despair and to hope without naivety. Together they sharpen each other. One warns you against arrogance that ignores limits. The other warns you against resignation that forgets promises. When at last you douse the lamps, you carry both lessons out into the night. From Babylon, you take the craft of living, bread warm, scales fair, name spoken, work sturdy. From the Bible you take the courage of hoping, prayers honest, love costly, graves temporary, and as you lie down the words from both rooms settle over you. You cannot stretch your days, so thicken them. You cannot stop your end, but you can belong to the one who says it isn't the end at all. 2 rooms, 1 night. You've walked both rooms now, the clay tablets of Babylon and the parchment of the Bible, and each has taught you how to live under the shadow of an ending. Babylon hands you the craft of limits. Death is certain, the gods are near and unpredictable, and meaning is made in what you build. Walls, laws, names, children, songs. The Epic of Gilgamesh asks you to thicken the day you have, eat your bread with joy, keep your scales fair, pour water for the dead, and leave behind work sturdy enough to outlast your breath. Scripture answers with a different music. Life is a gift, death is an intruder, and the last word belongs not to the grave but to God. Here, lament is holy speech. Justice is God's character on earth, and hope is not a mood, but a promise. Bones rise, graves give back, the garden becomes a city, and the one who wept at a tomb breaks open his own. You still number your days, but now you number them toward a morning you have not yet seen. Together the traditions sharpen your heart. From Babylon you learn humility, respect the flaw of being human, work with care inside the cycle, remember the dead. From the Bible you learn defiance, refuse to let the cycle be final, love with resurrection in view, live as if the new world has already started to breathe through the cracks of the old. One trains your hands, the other trains your horizon. Both ask you to be faithful with the time you are given. So as night gathers, take both gifts with you. Build what is honest and durable. Bless what is fragile and finite. Tell the truth in your grief. Keep watch in your hope. You cannot stretch your days, but you can deepen them. And when you finally lie down, let the last thought be simple and strong. Death is real and it is not in charge. As the shadows lengthen and the stars begin to whisper, we close the pages of this ancient tale. In the hush of night, truth rests where faith once stood strong. Sleep gently now, wrapped in the echoes of empires long gone. Until next time, when darkness falls and another lullaby of a fallen world begins.